Dominique Strauss-Kahn walks free. Prosecutors admit they have doubts on the credibility of the woman accusing him of rape. The judge releases him without bail. This comes as concerns are raised about the account the New York housemate gave of her assault by Strauss-Kahn. Prosecutors say she lied about some of her activities in the hours after the alleged attack. Her lawyers say she hasn't changed her story. And polls close after a key referendum in Morocco. Millions cast their ballots on constitutional changes proposed by King Mohammed VI. Hello and welcome. Thanks for tuning in to France 24. You're watching live from Paris. Also coming up in the next half hour, the business interview, and Tom Burgess-Watson sits down with Vladimir Yakunin, CEO of the Russian Railways. And now let's go straight to our top story of this evening. Dominique Strauss-Kahn walked out of court free this Friday. He was released without bail after a surprise hearing in New York. In a sudden turnaround, prosecutors said the credibility of the woman at the center of this rape case had been called into question. The judge, however, underlined the prosecution would continue to investigate. Strauss-Kahn still faces 7 charges of sexual assault for allegedly attacking the hotel maid.
This will be the last time Dominique Strauss-Kahn will be leaving his New York apartment under strict conditions. Accompanied by his wife Anne Sinclair, the former IMF chief appeared relaxed and confident as he stepped out of the Manhattan penthouse on Friday, where he spent weeks on house arrest. Strauss-Kahn was summoned to a surprise court appearance. It was there prosecutors revealed their investigation confirmed doubts about the credibility of Strauss-Kahn's accuser and agreed to lift his bail restrictions, a move his lawyers commended.
We believed from the beginning that this case was not what it appeared to be, and we are absolutely convinced that while today is a first giant step in the right direction, the next step will lead to a complete dismissal of the charges.
But Strauss-Kahn is not a completely free man. In fact, he's not permitted to leave the US. Prosecutors have retained his passport while they continue their investigation, and he's still expected to appear in court on July 18 as scheduled. The charges against him, which included attempted rape, have not been reduced. The lawyer of the 32-year-old Guinean-born plaintiff says the substance of the case has not changed.
The victim, from day one, has described a violent sexual assault that Dominique Strauss-Kahn committed against her. And she has never once changed a single thing about that account.
But that's not what the prosecution says. They accuse the alleged victim of lying about certain events, revelations which may cause the case against Strauss-Kahn to crumble.
Well, our correspondent in New York, Richard Chateauvert, told us more on the revelations that led the prosecutors to release Strauss-Kahn today. Here are the details.
He emerged from his home in Tribeca, looking shaken with his wife, and came to the courthouse here. The hearing lasted just 10 minutes, but the Manhattan District Attorney told the judge and the defense that it had uncovered serious evidence that undermines the credibility of the alleged victim, Nafissatou Diallo. For instance, she made up a story of being gang raped and beaten in her homeland to enhance her application for asylum. Also, one important element that has to do with the events immediately after the alleged assault. Instead of fleeing to a hallway and waiting for a supervisor, Nafissatou Diallo went to clean another room and then returned to clean Strauss-Kahn's room before reporting the alleged incidents. Strauss-Kahn was released on his own recognizance, which means he can roam free here in Manhattan and all throughout America. He did not retrieve his passport, but he will be free here in America until at least the next hearing, which is scheduled on July 18th. The Manhattan District Attorney recognized that the case, the strength of the case has been shaken, but the 7 charges against Strauss-Kahn still stand as of today. However, they could be dropped in the next few weeks. That's what we will find out during the next hearing on July 18th.
Well, joining me now on set for his take on today's surprise developments is Christopher Dickey, Paris bureau chief for Newsweek magazine. Mr. Dickey, you've covered the Strauss-Kahn scandal for Newsweek ever since it started about 6 weeks ago. Thanks for joining us. One important aspect to underline in this case is what our correspondent just pointed out, that the 7 charges against Dominique Strauss-Kahn are maintained. This isn't over yet.
No, it's not over yet. I mean, there was certainly a hint from Strauss-Kahn's defense lawyers that there may be a plea bargain in the works, that there's still negotiations going on. When you have a situation like this where you have one key witness and her credibility is suddenly called into doubt so that you think you probably can't take it to a jury, then the prosecution starts to think, shall we lower the bar a little bit? So, shall we start talking about misdemeanors instead of felonies? And the question is, will Strauss-Kahn or his lawyers take a deal like that? Because there is a lot of evidence that still ties him to some kind of incident in that suite.
So you think he might plead guilty to some of the more minor charges?
Well, not necessarily just more minor. I mean, something happened. There isn't much doubt about that. The one thing that the witness has not changed her testimony about is her account of what happened and how it happened. Everything that you hear today about her credibility being called into question, has to do with other incidents. Most of them are not related at all to this case. So the prosecution wants to find some way to move ahead and get Strauss-Kahn to admit that he did something. But of course, Strauss-Kahn's lawyers don't want to do that.
What chances do prosecutors really have now of proving Strauss-Kahn guilty, at least on some of these charges, now that the alleged victims' credibility has been questioned?
Well, you see, the question has to do with proving beyond a reasonable doubt in front of an American jury. Once you can call into question the credibility of the witness the way this witness seems to be vulnerable to, then it's very hard to get past that threshold of a reasonable doubt. On the other hand, the lawyers that were basically presenting their case on the courthouse steps today, who are working with the complainant, with the alleged victim, they're looking to file a civil case against Strauss-Kahn, in which they will certainly ask for many millions of dollars. And that will go before a jury if it gets to trial. And that jury doesn't have to decide beyond a reasonable doubt. They just have to decide that they think Strauss-Kahn should pay something to this woman.
That there's a reasonable probability. The victims' lawyers haven't, however, announced that they would go for a civil trial. You think that's the way they're headed?
No, they thought that would prejudice the case. I mean, one of the issues here, and maybe the most hurtful issue where the complainant is concerned, is that the day after the event, she was on the phone with a guy in jail in another state, talking to him about the case, and they're talking about how much money she might be able to get from Strauss-Kahn. That's exactly what her lawyers did not want to come out, did not want to have to deal with. Their line has been, we're just going to help the prosecution. We have this poor victim we're working with, not we're working with somebody who wants to try and squeeze millions of dollars out of Strauss-Kahn.
All right. Well, thanks very much for your analysis. Christopher Dickey, Paris bureau chief for Newsweek magazine. Thanks very much for being with us. Now, moving on to other world news. In Morocco, millions of people went to the polls today to cast their ballots on proposed changes to their constitution. King Mohammed VI has put forward amendments that would move the country towards parliamentary democracy. Well, the result of today's poll is widely expected to be a resounding yes, particularly after the government carried out a massive campaign in favour of the changes.
It is a historic vote, which the King, Mohammed VI, hopes will head off demands for radical reforms in the country. A yes is certain. The key thing will be the turnout. He is proposing a new constitution that increases the powers of parliament and judiciary, ostensibly at his expense.
The main thing is to say yes to change. There's more positive than negative. We're all saying yes.
But the proposed constitution changes fall far short of the demands of the 20th of February protest movement. It wants a fully fledged parliamentary monarchy.
We consider this constitution as neither democratic nor popular. This is why we stood by our position to call for a boycott. We hope this will be a constitutional advance establishing a parliamentary monarchy, which is one of the 20th of February movement's main demands.
It has not attracted the mass support of popular uprisings that toppled the leaders of Tunisia and Egypt. The 20th February movement insists, however, that a large turnout would be a sign there's real support for more fundamental reforms in Morocco.
French Foreign Minister Alain Juppé is in Russia today, where he held talks with his counterpart Sergei Lavrov. The visit came in the midst of a diplomatic row between Paris and Moscow. The Kremlin expressed anger earlier this week upon learning that France had supplied weapons to Libyan insurgents, saying this violated the arms embargo on Libya. Well, speaking after his meeting today, Juppé insisted Paris had informed all of its UN allies of the move. He and Lavrov acknowledged they had disagreements, but said they would keep on working together. Here's a closer look at how the dispute broke out.
Unilateral action that has caused a diplomatic storm. The French paper Le Figaro revealed earlier this week that France airdropped assault rifles and rocket launchers to Libyan rebels south of Tripoli. Russia, a fellow permanent member of the UN Security Council, accused France of a gross violation of a UN arms embargo and demanded an explanation. In a visit to Moscow, France's foreign minister said Paris was in line with UN agreements.
We are acting exactly within the framework of resolutions 1970 and 1973. The latter says in Article 4, if I remember well, notwithstanding Resolution 1970, that all means can be used to help the civilian population protect itself. And we acted in that framework.
Russia, however, is fuming. It says France's interpretation of Article 4 in the resolution is tantamount to allowing anyone to do anything. Moscow abstained on the resolution when it was voted in March.
It was precisely this paragraph that caused us problems with Resolution 1973.
France says it informed the UN Security Council and NATO about its decision to supply arms directly. But the airdrop has led to discord, with the UK saying delivering firearms isn't the right option, and the African Union saying the guns could fall into the hands of al-Qaeda militants in North Africa.
Well, France 24 also contacted the Libyan rebels themselves to discuss this arms drop. We spoke to the information minister of Libya's Transition Council. He said he had received assurances from the French presidency that more weapons would be provided.
Yes, Sarkozy promised to give us more weapons. We need them to win the battle and reverse the situation. We've gotten promises from France and from other countries as well. France isn't the only country that's given us weapons.
What kind of weapons will you be receiving from France?
Until now, all the weapons we've received have been defence weapons. We want to defend ourselves, not attack the others. The only ones we have are light and medium weapons to protect the population, our families and our children.
Hugo Chavez revealed he was suffering from a cancerous tumor. In a speech last night, the Venezuelan president confirmed he had surgery in Cuba to remove the malignant cells and that he would stay there for the time being to receive treatment. The revelation shook the country, of course, especially since Chavez left many questions unanswered, such as what kind of treatment he would be receiving and when he would return. In a bid to maintain order, the army chief said the military would guarantee the constitutional order, but that the president remained in charge and that he would return soon. You're watching live from Paris on France 24. Here's a quick reminder of our top stories this evening. Dominique Strauss-Kahn walks free. Prosecutors admit they have doubts on the